to Unraveling the Unexplained. My name is Kat, and I'm a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. This is my brother John, longtime fan of the creepy and paranormal.
Good evening.
And he has picked out a video for me to react to. I don't know what it is, but we are about to find out together. Yes. Success.
Despite possessing perhaps the most powerful military armament in the world, the United States military has pursued and allegedly continues to pursue diverse warfare options from beyond the physical realm. Among them, a $20 million program to assess possible uses of psychic or extrasensory perception activities, otherwise known as ESPA. Taking place within the Stargate project, many of these trials and tests remained hidden from the general public until the Freedom of Information Act brought them to light in 1995. Among the most prominent of these attempts were remote viewing activities that sought to uncover intelligence from deep within Russia, using only the minds of American soldiers stationed in the continental U.S.
No. Oh, I'm already triggered. Why am I not surprised?
That even if, they discovered how to use these things, their first intent using it is to fuck around with paranoia, spying on other countries, and...
Yeah. Why am I not surprised?
Yeah.
They probably got cells full of psychics, and they're like, "We'll feed you if you tell us what Putin's up to."
Yeah. What gets me is the name, the Stargate Project. It's like, couldn't come up with something just a little bit more, less on the nose.
Well, I mean, I don't know what Stargates have to do with psychics. That makes me think of Egyptian pyramids and Kurt Russell. Maybe I'm hella old. I know I'm old, but I'm just saying, that'll make me think of psychics anyway.
Pretty sure Stargate did not come out when this project got started.
I don't know how old Stargate is. It's old, though.
It's like a 90s
But anyway,
film.
this is not a good use of this. It's so dirty. It makes my energy feel dirty already. It's
exactly what any
seconds.
government would do with it.
Why governments can't do it. Irresponsible psychic activities. Shut up and watch the video.
The idea to integrate extrasensory espionage and psychic warfare techniques into the Army was not a uniquely American project. In fact, the start of this practice may have been traced back to Germany during World War II, when the scientific organization Unraveling, led by Heinrich Himmler, devoted an entire branch to study supernatural phenomena. This secret program was uncovered by the United States during a raid of his property in 1945. It mostly consisted of a collection of magical artifacts collected from conquered nations and peoples, as well as unusual discoveries from archaeological expeditions from around the world. The Soviet Union also happened to gain access to the archives from the project during this time, and so the two new superpowers began fearing what the other may accomplish by studying paranormal and extrasensory activities. While the full degree of seriousness with which the USSR considered these matters is relatively unknown, the intelligence community in the United States did consider the supposed pseudoscientific powers to be a serious matter. One of the few Soviets to rise to prominence with claims of psychic abilities was Nina Kulagina, who had been part of a tank regiment during the Second World War. She was studied by Soviet scientists after allegedly being able to move objects with her mind.
I bet that was fun.
The most alarming reports came from a 1970s laboratory experiment, where she supposedly manipulated a frog with her mind, eventually stopping its heart. Many accused her of fraud, and when skeptics reviewed footage of her powers of manipulation, they suggested she was simply relying on tricks. One of the earlier examples of extrasensory activities from the US military took place during the Vietnam War, when some troops took witching rods in an attempt to divine the locations of Viet Cong tunnels. Since the mission was a high priority, and morale was low, the military found it acceptable to integrate this unusual technique for the search. Scientific reasoning was seemingly cast aside during the mission. It's difficult, if not near impossible, to fully assess the success of using witching rods, since many of the tunnels remained hidden, and the ones found were often revealed by a number of coinciding factors. Later, as the fears driven by the space race, Cold War, and new waves of terrorism soon began to take hold of military planners and civilians alike, the question began to arise about whether intelligence agents could use their minds to foresee, prevent, or even counter an attack. In the late 1970s and 80s, the majority of the extrasensory projects that the CIA and Department of Defense delved into sought to test and apply remote viewing, or RV. This type of psychic skill attempts to gather impressions, clues, images, or other information about an unseen, miles away target through nothing other than mentally applied extrasensory perception. The term remote viewing came from physicists Harold Puthoff and Russell Targ from the Stanford Research Institute, and they worked hard on having it be differentiated from clairvoyance, which was seen as an illegitimate skill at the time. At first, they worked through private funding from the Institute of Noetic Sciences and the Parapsychology Foundation.
So they took clairvoyance and they just called it something different to make it
Yeah.
sound more legitimate?
Yeah, because I guess they just like, oh, clairvoyance, that's pseudoscience. But remote viewing, that, I guess it makes it easier to get government funding if you make it sound a little bit more...
Make it sound not woo-woo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I think the only thing that protects us is the fact that most people don't believe us. You know what I mean? If people really did believe it, then you would end up in government labs like a lab rat and stuff. It's wild.
And their paranormal investigations often focused on test subjects who were perceived to be possessing an innate talent for RV. As the CIA became interested in their work, their operations expanded to official government facilities in collaboration with the intelligence agency. One test subject, a secretary named Rosemary Smith, took part in a small project run within Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. At the time, the U.S. government was looking for a Soviet bomber that had fallen in the African jungle. Satellite images and CIA intelligence had failed to locate the satellite, and in 1976 it was decided to give the RV operation a chance to look for it. Rosemary Smith believed she had psychic powers, and according to journalist Annie Jacobson's book Phenomena, The Secret History of the U.S. Government's Investigations into Extrasensory Perception and Psychokinesis, Rosemary, quote, was able to draw maps that pinpointed where this aircraft was within a few miles. Using this information, she successfully guided a paramilitary unit in the search for the crash site after they found a villager carrying a piece of the aircraft in the area she had pointed them to. Yet not everyone was sold on the idea of funding an extrasensory project for American intelligence. Representative Charles Rose, the chairman of the Intelligence and Oversight House Subcommittee, spoke out about this possibility, saying, quote, "Some of the intelligence people I've talked to know that remote viewing works, although they still block further research on it, since they claim it is not yet as good as satellite photography. But it seems to me that it would be a hell of a cheap radar system. And if the Russians have it and we don't, we're in serious trouble."
A human being is a cheap radar system? See,
That's how they look at things.
So I don't like it. I don't like the attitude they use about it. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
A person is not a cheap anything, and they're certainly not your radar system for your convenience. And that's not really how these types of things work. But we'll talk about it here in a little bit. You picked one that's triggering me.
Following the logic of the congressman, an official extrasensory perception activity operation was launched in October of 1978 on the orders of Major General Edmund Thompson, who genuinely believed in the prospect of the undertaking. Of it, he said, quote, "I never liked to get into debates with skeptics, because if you didn't believe that remote viewing was real, you hadn't done your homework." The project was overseen by Lieutenant Frederick Holmes Atwater, a self-reported psychic headhunter, until 1987, with the understanding that it would be an inexpensive and passive undertaking. The program, codenamed Grill Flame, was carried out at Fort Meade in Maryland. It was run with support from Major General Albert Stubblebine III, who was eventually in full control of the project. Major General Stubblebine strongly believed in the promise of what remote viewing could deliver to the intelligence community. It's thought that it was only because of him that the project survived, since skepticism existed within the military as it transitioned the project out of the budget to make it only a Defense Intelligence Agency endeavor. As stated in a declassified summary released by the CIA from 1981, quote, "Grill Flame is an Army and DIA jointly financed effort to study novel intelligence collection techniques that will help to identify the capabilities and vulnerabilities associated with paranormal phenomenon having military applications. The team of supposedly psychic individuals was small, at no time larger than 20, and worked out of buildings 2560 and 2561 at Fort Meade, as well as makeshift wooden barracks. While many of their practices focused on uncovering Soviet intelligence, they also tried to locate U.S. war prisoners in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, with varying degrees of success. One of the more promising RV sessions happened in September 1979, when the National Security Council asked for information on a naval Soviet base. The viewers were given a sealed envelope containing a photograph of the base. One of the viewers reported mentally accessing images of a building by a shoreline smelling of industrial products. Within the building, he could see a coffin-like weapon which he described as having shark-like fins. Surprisingly, a few months after the experiment, satellite imagery confirmed that the USSR had built a ballistic missile submarine at the base, the Akula, which translated from Russian means shark. This particular incident inspired the book by John Ronson, The Men Who Stare at Goats, and the subsequent film adaptation. Two other high-priority projects that were undertaken by the members of Grill Flame were the attempted location of Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi and Manuel Noriega, the military dictator of Panama. As Gaddafi was not captured until the 2011 uprising, it suffices to say that locating him through RV was unsuccessful. As for Noriega, he evaded capture as the members of Grill Flame tried to find him for 3 years. Noriega was only later discovered after he had been granted sanctuary at the Holy See's embassy in Panama. The projects and experiments regarding remote viewing were and continue to be largely criticized for their lack of scientific rigor or support. The viewers were never told whether they had any degree of success, as it was believed that this knowledge might interfere with their morale, and therefore their powers.
Now, there's some truth that if you tell people they're failing over and over again, it might start to affect the result, so...
Yeah.
I guess I get it.
I mean, I believe you kind of told me that you gotta have a genuine belief in this kind of thing for it to function.
If it starts to shake your confidence in what you're doing, it might affect the effectiveness of it. So I guess I can see not telling them whether or not what they said was accurate.
And if that was part of the project, that kind of says to me that maybe they knew enough about how it worked to at least know that your mental state had a huge impact on it, and that they, you can't undermine you can't give them self-doubt.
Yeah. But it's not, I mean, it doesn't have a lot of information on what practices they were using or anything to achieve their results. So there's a kind of a, I'm not sure what practices they were using to do remote viewing.
Throughout its years of activities, the U.S. Extrasensory Project went through several different code names. Scan 8, Grill Flame, Gondola Wish, Center Lane, and Sunstreak. And all of them were later housed under the name Project Stargate. Aside from remote viewing, the participants also delved into psychoenergetics, which seek to affect or communicate with a person, animal, or object placed remotely. The results of RV, psychoenergetics, and other pseudoscientific methods have been questioned, as some of them appear to have been tampered with, rendering them untrustworthy. Adding to the mostly failed attempts at RV, the leadership of the project began to alienate those around them. Stubblebine became increasingly fascinated by more rare and unlikely pseudoscientific possibilities. He would host spoon-bending parties for officers, where alleged telekinetics and psychoenergetics would bend silverware into other shapes. He believed this supposed power could be applied to destroy enemy machinery and weaponry. The Stargate project was terminated in 1995, when the CIA released a report confirming and concluding that no applicable use had been found from these practices for intelligence operations.
Thank God.
The release also stated that the data provided by the program was inconclusive, and often vague or irrelevant. The report raised concerns that the leadership of the project may have tampered with the results, so the project could continue. Due to the Freedom of Information Act, most of the documents pertaining to Stargate have been released by the CIA and are accessible to the public, totaling almost 12,500 documents. Yet the United States may not be done with research and development of extrasensory perception activities. In 2014, the Office of Naval Research launched a $3.85 million program to explore intuition, inspired by a number of incidents, including one in 2006 from the Pentagon, claiming that Staff Sergeant Martin Richburg had used it to stop an improvised explosive device. A Naval Program Manager, Commander Joseph Cohn, referred to it in an interview with the New York Times as a sixth sense or spidey sense that alerted them to an impending attack or IED, or that allowed them to respond to a novel situation without consciously analyzing the situation.
Is that the end of it?
I believe so, yes.
Abrupt. It was abrupt, but we will link it in the description. Go check them out. Support the original creators. They appreciate it, and so do we.
So, government, military screwing around with remote viewing and other psychic stuff. Not unbelievable that they would be trying to do that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising if they think there's some way to get the upper hand on people, but...
So, in your opinion, though, how effective would that even be?
It depends on what you're trying to do. It doesn't work necessarily like...
It's not like you can just take somebody who can potentially do that and be like, hey, go spy on Putin or whatever.
Ugh, and yeah, it feels gross to me. Like, I don't spy on people intentionally. Because it's such an invasion of privacy. Like, can you imagine if people could just be watching you whatever you're doing? Like, and I've had that question from people before with astral projection. Like, hey, can you just go watch what people are doing? And I'm like, I mean, you could, but why would you be doing that? Not for anything good, probably. Do you know what I mean? Like,
obviously the government's interest would be to gain an advantage against other countries.
Right. But that kind of an energy surrounding it is going to kind of taint the experiment to begin with.
Like, what kind of effects would that potentially have?
It's just that it's not going to be... How do I say this well? It would be hard to give them the specific information that they're looking for, because often what comes through is whatever imagery is sort of connected with it. Like, sometimes you do get stuff like the lady with this. I see a building, there's like chemicals around, there's some sort of metal shark. Like, you're getting impressions, but that's rarely is that going to be specific enough to act on any kind of, what are you going to say? I see a field with trees in the background.
And actually, if you look at it, like, when the project was terminated, it was specifically because the information being gained was fairly vague.
Right. It's difficult, when I get images, I had one, here's a good example, where suddenly I'm standing on a porch, and it's like one of those old school wraparound porches, and there's a wind chime, and I can hear the wind chime, and there's like a kind of knot yard, like dry tall grass out front, and like a dirt road, and there's a lady in a yellow dress walking her dog walking by. Where is that? Illinois, Iowa, Great Britain, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying is, like, it would be difficult for the kind of stuff that comes through to be of specific
nature
use. Like, that would have to be a very specific honed skill to do that.
And even if you could, it would still be kind of hard to do.
Even when I am getting some specifics, it's hard to pick out specific locations. A 2-story old school roadside hotel room with an old cigarette smell in it. It's on the side of a highway, Route 7.
Yeah, that gives a bit of information, but not much in terms of, like...
Yeah. You know how many Route 7s there are in the world? Like...
And clearly, for the government and military, they want more specific information they could act on anyway, which they're generally not going to get through that kind of thing.
When you get imagery through like that, you're getting impressions like that, but it's not... very rarely is it, like, actually showing you, like a map or a specific location or anything like that.
Yeah, at best, there was that one story of the lady that led them to, like, the general area of a downed plane.
Yeah. It can happen, but it's not going to happen with the consistency and
It's
specific.
it's not quite like being able to choose that I want to be in a room with these top generals of an other adversarial nation and hear their secret plans.
Yeah, it's not quite as simple as that.
Yeah. But it could potentially be used for good things, like maybe search and rescue could be used to get a general location on maybe a missing hiker or something.
And like they were saying with the guy at the end there, with your like intuition, your spidey senses, that can
Yeah.
be used for things all day, every day. Hone that skill. It'll have you turning left instead of right where there's a car crash. It'll have you going straight instead of taking that left turn to the different convenience store where maybe the winning lotto ticket is. Like, hone your intuition for sure, because those kinds of skills are super helpful and everybody has them. A lot of people,
Everybody has a gut feeling.
yeah, a lot of people just they lean too much towards the practical, so they go, no, this is the route I take to work. No, a lot of people on autopilot. This is the walk I take. This is the route I go to work. This is my routine. So a lot of people just rely on habit or their routine. But if you were more flexible in what you do, have a more flexible spontaneity sort of element into your daily life, then your intuition would guide you all kinds of places and away from things that happen that you don't want. So, or depending on your frame of mind, they might lead you right to,
What you're looking for.
they might lead you right to bad things too. If you're running around in your mind thinking about bad things all day. Well, we would hope not, but some people do that.
As for the government,
Yeah,
they're always thinking about bad things happening with other nations, aren't
that's
they?
kind of what I'm saying, is it's such a negative energy to be surrounded by that kind of a mentality of paranoia and spying and things like that to begin with, that
Not going to have
it's
good
not
results.
it's not what those kinds of abilities are intended to. It's a communications interface. Psychic abilities, it's removing the time and space factor so that you can get impressions like off of people. Some people are empaths and can feel what you're feeling and get impressions off of you. Look into your eyes maybe and see some different things going on or what you're thinking about. It's meant to be, it's part of our natural communication system that we don't use readily when we're manifested physically as humans. But it's the soul communication system when we cross over. Because we no longer have mouths or bodies or... So it's all of the only thing those kinds of abilities really are is all of the abilities that we use consistently, regularly, when we're not physically manifested. Like when we die and cross over. And some people are better at using them while they're still here and physically manifested. That's all it is. It's not some weird genetic brain abnormality or special gifted people. It's just that many people don't realize that's what it is and get in their routines and shut that kind of thing out, or don't take it very seriously. So I appreciate the government was taking it seriously anyway,
But not for any purpose that would be considered
no, it's not
positive.
gonna. It's stick with your satellites. It's not gonna give you the same kind of satellite specific information. And there are a lot of emotional currents that come through with stuff like that. So you might be getting a place or a location, but you might also be getting somebody's state of mind through that, or somebody's connection to that pops up that interferes. One of the challenges of working with this kind of information when it comes through is being able to separate out what is your personal association instead of an actual impression. So for example, like let's say the girl that was seeing the building with that smells like chemicals all around it and whatever, if that smell of chemicals happens to trigger an association for her, and it could get interpreted as something that's not an actual intuition coming through or an actual sight coming through, but it's really just the association that the medium is making with a smell or something that's there.
So it could be getting completely different information.
So you could be getting cross information based on whether or not you're able to tell the difference between impressions coming through and the associations that your human mind is making based on those impressions.
Right.
It can be tricky to sort those out. Sometimes you get muddled information coming through.
Okay, makes sense.
I don't think it's good for the kind of thing that they're wanting to do, and I don't think that it's good for the kind of people who can do it to be doing that kind of work energetically for them anyway.
It's not going to have a good effect on their mental and emotional state.
No, I wouldn't think so, no.
Yeah.
That's what I got on it.
So, government people, if any of you happen to be watching this, stop messing around with psychics and remote viewing. It's a waste of time. Just stick to more conventional technologies. Be paranoid that way. The responsible way.
Or, we could all just decide collectively as humanity to stop blowing each other up. Alright. Let us know what you think. Drop us a comment, like, subscribe, all of that fun stuff, and we will see you next time on Unraveling the Unexplained.
Have a good evening.